Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to take a look at Mars turning direct in Gemini through all 12 signs. So these are effectively sun or rising sign horoscopes for the completion of Mars's retrograde period in Gemini. Before we go through those signs and kind of give you a sense of what to expect given the house location of Mars, we are going to take a look at the overall Mars cycle and its timeline just to refresh on it. And then we're going to briefly just touch on some of the things that we touched on yesterday in review. I'm going to quickly go through that list so that you can kind of refresh on, generally speaking, what it means that Mars is turning direct. So that will be our agenda for today. Before we get into it, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Share your comments and reflections in the chat box. Helps the channel to grow. You can find transcripts of any of my daily talks on the website every day, nightlightastrology.com. I also recommend that you go over there and check out the new courses that we have starting in January. We have the Roots and Spheres program, which is a moon circle gathering that my wife and I are leading before new and full moons throughout 2023. We're looking at the astrology of the month ahead, and we are also dieting and working with specific plant teachers that are paired with every moon cycle. So great class. Hope to see some of you there. Readings and Passages, which is an advanced practice and live client reading workshop for people who already have a background in Hellenistic astrology or who have already taken or are in the process of my year one course. That also starts in January. You can check those out. We do have some need-based tuition available for any of those courses that I just mentioned starting this month. If you have any questions, email us info@nightlightastrology.com. All right, let's take a look at the Mars cycle and where it's been and just kind of refresh on it before we get into the horoscopes today. So we're going to take Mars back in time to August 1st. So Mars enters the sign of Gemini last August. They were back in 2022, back in the day. And you're looking at right around August 19th into the 20th that Mars is making its transition into Gemini. So first of all, Mars has been in Gemini for a very long time now. As that transit progressed, we saw Mars slowing down and moving into its retrograde toward the very end of October. It gets up to about the 25th degree, at which point it's stationed, and you can see that it's stationing right here. And it's doing so, this is around October 30th, and then by the 31st, it's retrograde. So 30th into the 31st of October, it turned retrograde. Where has it been since then? Remember, when it turned retrograde, it went through a long square with Neptune, and now it's retrograding back through the square to Neptune. And so a very powerful Mars-Neptune signature around this retrograde. And Mars has now been going backward, backward, backward. And as we come into the month of January, here's what we're going to see. This week, as Mars is slowing down at that 8th degree, it stations Thursday, January 12th, into the Friday, January 13th, and Saturday, January 14th, it's turning direct. And then it is going to go forward again. And in forward or direct motion, it's going to continue working its way through Gemini for quite some time. Here we're all the way into March. And it's not going to be, here we are. Look at that, 29th degree is March 24th into the 25th, that it is changing from the 29th degree into Cancer. That transition will be one we're going to be taking a hard look at. But the point is that even though Mars is turning direct, we are now going to be effectively reworking through all the degrees of the retrograde through the end of March. So this winter, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, or summer, I guess, in the Southern Hemisphere, you have a long period of working through Mars and Gemini yet to come. But the turning direct has some very specific meanings. Now, yesterday, we spent time just looking at those meanings, and I highly recommend, if you haven't watched that video yet, to go back and watch it. But in review, because I want you to now apply these 10 dynamics or these 10 themes to the house that we're going to be looking at for your horoscope today. So what are they? Number one would be delays and frustrations that are kind of coming to an end, which a retrograde Mars could have signified. Setbacks or periods of review or revision completed. Reversals of fortune. Anytime a planet is turning from direct to retrograde or retrograde to direct, you can just kind of see a turn or twist of fate or fortune. Number 4, conflicts mediated. Number 5, lessons learned. Number 6, a stronger, wiser Mars. And that could kind of be, psychologically speaking, the way how we've leveled up with Mars. 7, a revolution ready to be integrated. A philosophical or intellectual change. Important conversations ready to be had, or something that was abnormal, that was kind of like, is becoming now is ready to be the new norm. So powerful themes. And now what I want to do is just take Mars through those 12 houses. And we've done this a few times before. You could go back, for example, and look at the initial Mars retrograde horoscopes that we did as a way of kind of looking back at it and getting maybe a slightly different take than the one you'll get today. But the point of this is to just, raise your awareness of that whole sign house that Mars is doing its work in at the moment, because that's going to give you the most precise topical area in which this turning of Mars direct is likely to manifest in your life right now. So let's go through it sign by sign. And I'm just going to say a few things for every sign. And again, the point of this is to just almost stimulate our symbolic perspective, so that this week we just are walking around a little bit more lucid and conscious of where things are going. So Aries, if you are an Aries sun or rising, if you like to listen to your Aries sun sign horoscope, that's fine. I suggest your rising, because by whole sign, that will always it will always align with the position of your birth chart. If you are an Aries rising, one of the things that I like about this for you, and we're going to take a little bit for every sign to be looking at the connections between, oh gosh, I don't know. Okay, there we go. We're going to be looking at the signs that involve Jupiter as well in some cases, because Jupiter is just entered Aries and its ruler, Mars, has been retrograde. So when you have a planet in a Mars-ruled sign and Mars is retrograde, or a planet in a Mercury-ruled sign and Mercury is retrograde, you will often see that things shift. Like, there are noticeable changes when the ruling planet of another planet turns direct from retrograde, or retrograde from direct. Anyway, with Jupiter in your first house and Mars in your third as an Aries sun or Aries rising, I get the feeling that there have been changes of mind, mood, mental changes in the way you perceive or communicate, changes around the acquisition or development of skills or abilities, technology, patterns in the everyday environment that have been up for review with the Mars retrograde in your third house. Maybe some challenges or changes around siblings as well. That's a third house topic that can come up. But the point is that with Jupiter in your first house, you're ready for personal growth and expansion. The key word for Jupiter, growth and expansion. In the first house, there's a very empowering quality with Jupiter there right now. But maybe you've been waiting for this change of mind, or this kind of third house change to take place before you can implement the changes that Jupiter in Aries has in mind. So I would see this as a moment of personal empowerment rooted in the completion of some changes around mental, intellectual, or environmental dynamics. So that's what I'm looking at for Aries sun or rising. Let's move forward now to Taurus. If you are a Taurus, this is 12th house and second house territory. So financial changes, a significant shift around money, finances, resources, business, getting ready to complete. And now maybe you're moving into an integration phase. This should be really interesting for people who are entrepreneurs or have their own businesses. For example, I'm a Taurus rising. This is happening just as the Kickstarter is going to be wrapping up, and we're going to be implementing a lot of the new projects that we had in mind for the funds that we raised from the Kickstarter, right? I think that's really fascinating. I also think one of the things that I think is really fascinating is the 12th house Jupiter. So 12th house Jupiter is interesting because you have a benefic in a house that's sometimes difficult. What I have found is that the locked up, pent up, or unconscious places tend to experience liberation, or we find that there is some room for positive growth and development when Jupiter or even Venus sometimes is in the 12th house, especially Jupiter. It's like, you know, I think about developing faith or confidence or strength where there has been weakness or doubt or insecurities, or maybe Jupiter in the 12th house is about, the need to be free from boundaries or barriers, and to look at in what ways we have held ourselves back, or in what ways we have been blind to something in our own psyches or in our lives somewhere. And Jupiter in the 12th will want to set us free, but we may need a lot of courage to do so. What I find really interesting is with this transit, you have effectively something around business, money, finances, or your personal resources that are at the same time related to some way in which you're developing greater awareness of unconscious material, or the need to break free somehow, the need to push past a self-limiting, or a period of doubt or something like that. I'll reflect, for example, on the fact that Jupiter in Aries in my 12th house was related to, the first time it went in, it was related to the exploration of my relationship with religion and the religious community that I was a part of, and then the decision to sort of leave and do my own thing. A very liberating, very tough choice, very Jupiter in Aries in the 12th house. So one of the things that I find really interesting about that is that as that has happened, and as Mars has been retrograde in the second house, it's come along with kind of like a reprioritization of my plans with my business and my work going forward. That freedom that was granted psychically has been translating into a shift of values and plans for the future for Nightlight Astrology. And I've just noticed that really vividly, the connection between those two areas. So I think for Tauruses, one of the things I would say is it's just that the need to break free from unconscious patterns with a degree of courage and strength is also connected to the topic of money, business, resources, and a change or shift in that area at the same time. That's the best I can do to explain it. It's sometimes hard for me to explain the Taurus horoscopes because I'm like right in the middle of them. So I find I like lack objectivity. But anyway, add your thoughts, obviously, to your own experience of Taurus rising. I'd love to hear from you guys. All right. Well, for Geminis, this is in your first house with Jupiter in your 11th. And I'm really liking looking at this pairing of the two planets. Jupiter's been wanting to introduce something new around communities or groups, but it's been waiting on you, Geminis, to finish something that's very personal and existential. It's like you're going through an identity makeover or a transformation of identity or body or health, psychology. And as that change has been happening, it has been coinciding with the need to implement those changes in a greater social or professional community, or something like that. Maybe there's been the need to take leadership or step back from some position of leadership. Maybe there's been the impetus to change who you're hanging out with somehow, whether that's a social or religious group or community, or like a different kind of culture that you want to be a part of or don't want to be a part of. But it's like the Jupiter change is going to be, the Jupiter change in the 11th house of groups, friends, and allies is intimately connected to this very existential change with Mars retrograde in the first house. Energy, health, appearance, vitality, and just personal development, psychological and personal individuation work that now wants to connect itself to growth and development in the house of friends and groups. I think that connection is interesting to note. All right, let's go on to Cancer rising and take a look. So here we have the two places, Jupiter in the 10th and Mars in the 12th. This is fascinating because I would say that for Cancers, you're looking at the connection between your worldly ambitions and everything that distracts, confuses, muddles, or frustrates you from doing those things. For example, I want to do X, Y, and Z, but maybe I tend to bite off more than I can chew. And Mars in the 12th house has been making me more aware of the chaos that it lives in my head, in my emotions, in my body, and the tendency that I have to put too many irons in the fire, to do too many things at once. Or I've been working through different personal challenges, the things that are in my blind spot or in the unconscious, and how they're connected to my success or my ambitions in life, especially professionally. Well, as Mars is starting to turn around in the 12th house, I wonder if you're starting to feel more confident and stronger and clearer. And if, especially when Mars goes into Cancer in your first house at the end of March and then spends a while there while Jupiter is still in Aries, I wonder if there's a reorientation of your ambitions, your professional life, and your sense of calling in a more public, social, professional way, that's coinciding with like sorting out a lot of unconscious shadow material right now. And you may see that really come to a head where you're doing the really deep processing work of that actually when Mars moves into Cancer at the end of March and take it into about May. So let's see how that turns out anyway. That should be really interesting for Cancers. Let's go to Leos. So for Leos, we're looking at the connection between Mars turning direct in your 11th house and Jupiter in Aries in your 9th. So social and religious would be one thing that comes to mind. Changes in terms of friends, groups, and communities are coinciding with growth and development around religion, higher learning, teachers, sages, philosophical matters, also matters of higher education. So I wonder and then you think of Mars turning direct in the 11th house, a process of transformation, maybe some frustrations that you've been looking at in terms of groups of people that you belong to, or organizations or communities, or where you feel at home socially. It's as though there's an ideological, philosophical, religious component to this change, and the two places are going to be working together, especially between now and the end of March. It could also coincide with something around community and places of learning, or teachers and teachings, things like that. So that's for my Leos. All right, let's go to Virgo. So if you're a Virgo, well, the Mars retrograde is in your 10th house, and then Jupiter's going to be in the 8th. This is interesting because it is as though, again, just a transformation professionally, looking at frustrations or kind of like different kinds of battles in the workplace, and different kinds of challenges or setbacks or delays or changes of approach or strategy, things that you've been dealing with publicly in terms of your reputation or public image or role or ambitions. So the Mars retrograde has been touching in on that 10th house. Mostly that, for most people, you're going to see that in terms of career, public facing image or reputation, ambitions in the world, and a process of evaluation that's been happening there. That's connected intimately to Jupiter in the 8th house, who's often going to bring you blessings or benefits through other people, or through other people's assets or resources, or the way in which they value you or add something to your life. So have you had to make some changes so that you can be in a position to accept help or blessings or support from other people? Or has the retrograde created a situation in which you were in need of some kind of support, and now you're able to move forward again because of that support that's appearing or has been appearing very recently? Those are some of the things that come to my mind, as well as who or what you want to collaborate with, say yes to receiving help from, or who or what you feel indebted or obligated to provide support to. And those things would be intimately connected with, again, your public facing image or reputation, or maybe something to do with your career. All right, let's move forward to Libra rising. So with Libra rising, we're taking Mars in the 9th house, Jupiter in the 7th. So there's a connection between the realm of higher beliefs and knowledge and learning and religion and spirituality. The compass of our lives is oriented in and through the temple of the 9th house, our beliefs, as well as the process of learning and expanding our understanding and wisdom. That's how our life path changes, because our wisdom or knowledge or understanding grows. So you've been going through a period as a Libra where you're refining or shifting your approach to knowledge or higher education. Or if you work in those realms, then something could be changing in the workplace. If, say, you're a lawyer or you work at a university or you're involved in a religion, sometimes there'll be different kinds of disputes ideologically that arise with the Mars retrograde in the ninth. But this is also connected pretty intimately to Jupiter in the seventh house of love and relationships. And so what's the overlap, Ben, between learning, places of higher education, philosophy, religion, and the topic of love and relationships? I would look for those two areas to be in touch with one another in an interesting way in the next couple of months. Sometimes that pairing could also indicate that you're having to figure out what your beliefs are apart from, separate from, or in relation to someone else that you love or some other party or group. So those are some things to watch for. All right, well, let's go on with Scorpio rising. The Mars retrograde is turning direct in your 8th house with Jupiter. Remember, Jupiter's in Aries, waiting for Mars, its host, to turn direct before it can really start popping. Jupiter in Aries in the 6th house and Mars in the 8th. Now, to me, this one is one of the more difficult ones. And I'm not saying that it's going to turn out bad here, but like, here's what I think Scorpios have to watch for. Basically, because the 6th house was traditionally associated with conflicts and the 8th house with other people's money or resources, I think that you could be looking at questions about what is owed or debts and conflict or fights or power struggles around people wanting to be free versus people owing something to somebody, or the sense that I need to rely on you for something, but you're unreliable, or I want to be free from depending on something, but it's complicated to get in a position where I'm no longer dependent on something or someone that I honestly still need. So, trying to get out of a contract, for example, or, mediation through a divorce, as well as the kinds of resources that we may need in order to accomplish the kinds of tasks that we need to get done. That may put us in a position where we have to ask for something or rely on someone or something that we wish we didn't have to. But sorting those things out looks like it's part of the process. You could also see, for example, positions like this where someone has to file for bankruptcy or ask for some form of aid or support, ask for an extension on a loan. Basically, the feeling of having to work through something and needing some form of support or help in order to do it. The other thing would be clashes of value, where it's like I'm really passionate about something and I'm clashing because someone else's values or the way they want to use their time or energy, or conflicts about how you use money in a relationship. Those kinds of things could come up as well. But I think you'll be sorting those things out between now and March, and I'm sure you'll be successful in doing it. I feel like Scorpios are very persistent and will work until an authentic solution feels like it's been reached. So I think my Scorpios will do just fine with this one. Now, Sagittarius, the Mars retrograde has been in the 7th house of love and relationships. It's turning direct. And so that change of direction means that maybe you're ready for some refinement or resolution, or you've reached a tipping point somehow in the arena of love and relationships. Now, at the same time, the position of Jupiter in the 5th house of children comes to mind. So, the topic of love, marriage, and children could be overlapping somehow. But on the other hand, you could see that there are conflicts between, say, children and a step parent, or, you're dating someone new, you've been a single mom, and it's been challenging because of some way in which the step parent clashes with the children, these kinds of things. Now, on the other hand, you could see that there's some shift that's both creative, romantic, and very positive, while at the same time, Mars is turning direct in the house of love and relationships. So, are you ready to bury the hatchet, and put troubles aside, stop blaming, and return to some kind of space of joy? I think creative collaboration in relationships comes to mind for Sagittarians as well. So Jupiter in the fifth house wants to do creative, big, fun, beautiful, romantic things with a kind of aggressive, pioneering, adventurous spirit. Mars in the seventh house might be sorting out some conflicts or challenges in relationships. And so the two things, it's like joy, fun, and also you could see like, hey, I'm trying to get rid of a critical spirit in the relationship so that more joy can be felt or experienced. But my partner has to know that they can't be as critical as they are, or something like that. Those are the kinds of themes that pop into my head looking at that combination. All right, Sagittarius, we'll move on. Capricorns. For Capricorns, we're looking at Jupiter in the fourth house and Mars in the sixth. Now, for this one, I would look at some challenges around home or family. For example, when you're moving, sometimes it's stressful. Sometimes when children are born or there's marriages, although it's a joyful occasion, it can be a very busy and kind of like frenetic time. So Mars retrograde in the sixth house of work, service, sacrifice, a place that can often bring up challenges and conflicts. Mars rejoices in the sixth house, and then Jupiter and Aries in the fourth house. It feels like new stuff is growing around home, family, living environment, but there's work. For example, Mars and Gemini in the sixth could easily be the picture of, contractors in your home building off a new room in the basement or something. It could be a picture of having to hire someone to do some kind of work around home and family, hiring movers. It could be the picture also of family conflicts that are coming up, or just a kind of stress or tension around home and family. Maybe that's ready to be resolved as Mars is turning direct, and Jupiter in the fourth is generally a pretty positive planet. So maybe you're ready to move past certain kinds of stressors or conflicts relative to home and family right now. And that's what I would look at for Capricorns. Now, with Aquarius rising, Mars is turning direct in the fifth, while Jupiter's in the third. To me, for Aquarians, this has the feeling of when you see Mars retrograde in the fifth house, sometimes you're going to see people going through a process of like addressing or getting real about something that they have a problem with. Usually something that they're like, maybe alcohol or gambling or sex, or, oftentimes a Mars retrograde in the fifth will bring up our relationship to pleasure, joy, and fun, or even sexuality, or the impulse for pleasure, the pleasure-seeking principle. And there's some need to do some healing work there. Maybe some people are kind of pent up and repressed, and the Mars retrograde helps them loosen up. Oftentimes you'll see the opposite, where a strong Mars transit in the fifth will bring about people going too far with alcohol or spending or something like that. And then the retrograde could mean that they're having to address it somehow. So I wonder what's been coming up around the pleasure principle in your life in general, or the creative impulse, and how some kind of creative shift has been taking place. How the fifth house in general speaks to whether or not we are experiencing joy and happiness from the process of just living life and being ourselves. And so Mars retrograde can give you feedback about whether or not you're sort of in personal alignment, by helping you see whether or not you're in experience with some kind of joy or happiness that should naturally be the byproduct of living in alignment with your true self. So Mars retrograde there maybe has been helping you see the way you could do better at that, or make some kinds of changes so that you're being yourself and experiencing the joy and happiness that comes from that. Anything involving children or pregnancy could also be a part of the Mars retrograde. Well, when you pair that with Jupiter in the third, it makes me think that that you're growing mentally, you're growing intellectually, your mind and your ability to see and perceive things like accurately or more broadly, less narrowly, is a part of this. That there's some kind of growth of character, growth in relation to where and how you seek joy and pleasure, and also the connection to a mental growth. I'm seeing things differently, and that's helping me live a healthier and more authentic life. These are the kinds of things that come to my mind right now for Aquarians. All right. Finally, Pisces. So now we're taking Mars, the turning of Mars direct in the fourth house, pairing it with Jupiter and Aries in the second. And I look at this and I say, okay, well, there's been a whole period of looking at the topic of conflict, and let's just say the action has been squarely in the house of home, family, ancestral karma, land, your living environment. And when you look at Mars turning direct in that house, it could be that a period of challenge or frustration around those topics is coming to a close. That might be coinciding with growth around money, finances, or some kind of shift or development with your resources. Sometimes you'll see this kind of combination when someone buys a home, or they sell a home, or they make a move, or they make an addition, or they buy a new couch, or it could be something pretty simple like that. Sometimes you'll see some kind of connection between the family's resources and your own, or like a wills and estates and land and property that's in the family that somehow comes to you or comes to be entrusted to your care or something like that. So the connection between finances, money, growth and development in that house, and a period of maybe challenge or transformation around home and family seem to be coinciding. And you see that very strongly from now until the end of March as the two planets are working together now more easily. So that is what I have for all 12 signs today. I hope that you were able to get something good from this. I apologize, I'm in my gym gear. I had no time between coming home from the gym and somewhere I have to be in just a minute after I do this. So I apologize that I'm just looking like a sweaty gym bum today. Yeah, anyway, so we will be returning to our series on the Tao Te Ching for astrologers on Wednesdays, finishing up that series over the course of the next month or two. So we will be back to that series in midweek. We kind of pushed it to Saturdays during the Kickstarter to get content that had higher viewership totals during the middle of the week, because the Tao Te Ching series tends to be a little quieter compared to like one of these episodes. So we kind of pushed it on to Saturdays. It'll be back onto Wednesdays now for tomorrow and for the rest of that series. So I think it has about 6 or 7 episodes left in it. And then we'll be back later in this week, and we will be looking specifically at Venus's upcoming square to Uranus, which is happening over the weekend. We're going to take a nice long look at that transit, which is going to also be a huge highlight over the weekend. All right, that's what I've got for today. Don't forget to check out the website for the upcoming classes, Roots and Spheres program, readings and passages. Any questions, you can always email us, info@nightlightastrology.com. All right, you guys have a good day. Bye.